United States East Coast. Greetings from the heartland of Pineland, from Maine. I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to the show this morning. And it's going to be an important show. If I can do my job right, which is always a question, but hopefully I will, we're going to really get into a deep issue today. And I don't like talking about domestic American politics at all because it's all a farce and a charade. But I want to, it's fun to say how the English say it, charade, I know, but that's how they say it. It's fun to say it that way. Just like that hard D ending. Anyway, what I want to share with you today is an understanding of what's been happening and some really big things that are happening that are not getting the attention on media perhaps you're hearing in light of everything else happening, the very real problems with inflation. And it might give a different context to why we see World War starting in a lot of ways. And it's important to remember what the primary narrative that was developing was before we got into COVID world. And that was the nationalist versus the globalist. That is the populist uprisings of people around the globe that we saw succeeding as in the Brexit scenario, as in Trump's election, even though I would argue Trump, in fact, ended up being a sort of controlled opposition figure and how it actually worked. But it doesn't really matter what any of these people thought or what the actions were. The fact is that the narrative had moved to that level where people were sick of a global system, of an elite that didn't care about us and was acting against us. And in order for things to change, the elite would have to change the story. They would have to have problems that required global solutions, i.e. pandemics and world wars and famine. And also they would have to have a situation where the very nation itself was discredited by showing how ineffectual the various parties and governing entities were of different states and institutions at war with one another, so that they could justify having global systems of governance on the idea that the people themselves will demand them because the nations fail so badly. Never mind that the nations are failing so badly because the same people controlling them, as usual, are behind both sides. So we're going to get into that today, and I'm going to lay it out with terms to American domestic politics, how elections were a little bit played with going back, and really the control of the information ministry, which is really what this is about, because we live in an information economy, and those of you who are studying fifth-generation warfare will understand the battle we are fighting is to have access to good information, to information that isn't controlled, to not be silenced, to not be censored, and all the things you all know we deal with, including this channel. So that doesn't happen, so you help. I ask that you like and subscribe today. Share this channel with other people. Make comments, especially if they're nice. If you're going to come in here and just make an idiot comment, I'm just going to delete it. I mean, honestly, what's sadder? Someone would complain like about things I do or don't do. Well, you're watching me, so what's that say about you? Go get a life if that's how you feel. This channel's here to benefit people, not to cause problems. But for those who do appreciate the value, I want to thank those who support the program, the Venmo CVC PRV, the P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine, 04739. Super chats are always open. Do share, do like. And I did share this on Twitter and on Facebook, which I usually don't do. My Twitter is at Real Pinelander. We'll see how things evolve over there, but I've kept a little influence over there from time to time. And these are available to you to try to reach some other people I don't usually reach, as well as just letting more people have access to the information, because this is an important survey we're going to do today. So I want to thank you for that, and just say before we go into this, Heavenly Father, just pray that what we put out is something that's truthful, that's pleasing to you, and that serves as good information to bring you to an understanding. All the solutions that are offered in the world, the freedom that it promises, is just another trap often, and that we find our truth in you, and that you protect this channel and those of us who are in our community, as well as for Dana and myself, to continue speaking truth as best we can. Please correct us where we're wrong and help give us the strength to continue speaking, especially on Sundays where we do our Sons of Dust ministry, which will probably be the next broadcast after this. All right. So we're going to go back to 2012. And actually, we can go back before 2012. We're going to go back to Edward Snowden. And I want to talk about that for a second. The reason why he's living in exile in Russia after an interesting chase, if I remember right, the history, it's not really important, but he had to hide in Hong Kong for a while, and then he eventually sought refuge over there. It was because he published something about a little program called Echelon. And for those of you who don't know what Echelon is, I'm going to give you the brief overview. Do your own research. If you were asleep during the aughts, go back and find it. All I'll tell you is we bombed a bunch of people and it didn't accomplish anything. Most people were. It's not uncommon. But Echelon was a system that goes back to an old intelligence sharing agreement called Five Eyes. It was an agreement between the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, whereby information would be shared between certain elements of the intelligence community. And as the internet became more prominent, what essentially it was used for is a way to trigger domestic spying. Remember, like, for instance, just think and keep this in the back of your mind, with Trump, how much of the intelligence came out of the Brits? What was that guy, Chris Christopher, I can't remember what his last name was, the guy who came up with the dossier, Christopher Steele. Maybe that's why I didn't remember. That's actually really funny. In any case, so what ends up happening is Echelon is created as a means to share information between them. And so let's say the FBI wanted to do some research on, I don't know, infamous dissident Thomas J. Kaczynski. So what they might do is they're not allowed to spy on me unless they have a warrant. But all the internet traffic that they want to look at gets shifted over to London and then comes back here. It's fiber optics, happens at the speed of light. And considering that's about, what is it, probably 6,000 miles. Speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, if memory serves. So in less than a millisecond, the information goes to England. They reach in there, grab anything related to me, and be like, oh, we have a terror threat with a domestic American. Let's share it with our friends at the FBI. Oh, thank you. You gave it to us. And this is why, by the way, I don't trust law enforcement, because I know they do things like this. Entrapment is their game. Look at what happened with the Gretchen Whitmer case, if you did any other proof, of how that worked. Half the time when you see attacks happen, even going back to old Ruby Ridge, literally the FBI shot the kid's dog. You want to know why everything went funny over there? And then they killed, what's her name? Patty Weaver. They shot her dead, and that guy was the one who got promoted forward. No one ever talks about these things, but these things have been going on a very long time. And I've tried, and I do get along with a lot of people in domestic law enforcement, believe it or not. There are good people who are doing a hard job, but their leadership is corrupt, and a lot of the people who are the good guys are leaving, and the new people coming in, they aren't, void-driven, ideologues, especially up in Washington. We'll get to that later. So Echelon's put into place, and I want to mention that because I want you to know the thought and the process of how our government spies on us and how there are hypocritical measures at every step of the way. Now let's jump to the 2012 election, and look, this isn't purporting to be a complete history. I'm just giving you a flavor of the buffet of buffoonery here. So what we see is in 2012, Barack Obama was not a popular candidate. Mitt Romney, despite being Mitt Romney, almost won, which really says something. Or was it? It was Romney. Yeah, it was Romney in that, because McCain was basically set up to be the fall guy in 2008. Nobody wanted him, yet he somehow got in there. Funny how that always happens. Anyway, so turd sandwich running not being as is, there was a deal that worked out where Obama was basically able to weaponize Facebook by getting access to certain data that Facebook shared internally with the Obama campaign because their leadership agreed with it, and that he was able to leverage that to win. Let's jump forward to 2016, and there's a reason I'm telling this. Some of you have heard about Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica was a third-party entity that had access to Facebook data that was used for marketing. The Trump campaign under Kushner contracted working with them to get these items, okay? And what ended up happening in that process was that the Trump campaign was more effectively able to use and leverage their play on Facebook, Twitter, and other things to reach to a bigger portion of people than any Republican had done to that point. And what ended up happening as a result of that is it's thought that this helped him win the election. However, they made a huge stink saying this is illegal. You were using and farming government data to support one side against the other. Well, no one gave a damn when Facebook literally handed to them in 2012. And I'm not here to endorse Trump. I'm not. And I'm not here to take shots at the left. It's not so much about that. But what I'm showing you is government has been in the process of working with Silicon Valley to pick the winners the whole time. And the reason they did that, after 2016, there was a panic in saying that if people have free speech, they're going to support things we don't like. So they redefined what speech is. They redefined it in a way to say, we're going to protect certain communities and we're going to criminalize hate speech. And what is hate speech? Well, it's anything the government doesn't want to hear or that runs against the woke consensus of the elites. Not the consensus of the people, not something that's decided in a public square, but law that's made with violations of the First Amendment. And this is why, going back to Obama, it's so important that he internationalized the internet, because what they did was originally that was owned, like ICANN and some of these things were owned by Americans under American law as nonprofits and had First Amendment protections. And the left didn't want that to continue. And by left, they don't really mean just that. I mean, the political left always does it, but really the global institutions are on all sides. To give you an example, while we're dealing with inflation, while we're at the edge of the war, what are Republican senators out there? They're complaining about the injustice of allowing people to get out from under their student loans. So while you're busy sucking on the bankers' pudenda, which is what you always do to prove that you get to be the loyal opposition when the purges start, the actual people needed help. And we've never had what people actually want, which is a party that's probably economics left of center, but friendly to small business, and that's or socially right of center, that respects our traditions, our heritage, and our faith. We aren't allowed to have that, and it's no accident. We elect the Republicans because we want social we want social correctness. And on the other hand, what do we get instead? We get, huge tax breaks for the people who put these corporate woke philosophies against us.
I just saw a thing about the student loan. I'm not caught up on it. What's going on with that?
Well, the Democrats are proposing that to try to not get bloodbathed in the midterms, they want some degree of loan forgiveness for people who owe. I heard one person say up to $10,000 of loan debt. I've heard that number be far larger. This is in negotiations, but the Republicans are coming out saying hard, the number one priority in America is to make sure you pay your debts. And nice to see. What a great party, but the Republican Party's always been...
Let's just send a couple more $1 billion overseas.
So, at the same time, the Biden administration has a current pending bill for $33 billion, 33, favorite Masonic number, yay, to pay for funding Ukraine. And to put it in logic, Russia's whole military budget is $68 billion. Ukraine's military budget was $7 billion. So, this is a pretty big advancement. If you want to know why we're going to get into a bigger war, there's your thing. At the same time, they want $22 billion for COVID. Now, I don't think most people would support that, but I guarantee you what's COVID been able to put forward, and this is part of the story, the tracking mechanisms. Oh, we have to make sure you're safe. You can't go out. Remember, Facebook. Are you safe? Are you not safe? All that is just social credit score crap that's coming right out of China. All right. All that's going to come in. Let's take a step back. So we want to tell the story in a little bit of a narrative function. So in 2015 and 2016, big losses happened for the globalists. Loss number one was the Brexit scenario, where they were not supposed to vote their way out of the UK, yet they did. Loss number two was that Trump won. And I'm sure that election was pretty fixed. And Trump still won because it would have been too obvious. And the problem with all these things is the globalists know that they're hated. The elites know they're hated. Macron wins an election, 58-42. Ballots are being ripped at the thing. You can actually see to invalidate them. And the next day he's being pelted with tomatoes. But hey, we support and defend democracy. You keep voting until you get the thing we want. We treat our democracy like a slot machine. It's a casino. The bank owns all the money and they keep rolling out there so until you lose. You might win every now and then. You might be allowed to take a little bit out so you can tell the story about how great and awesome it is. But democracy's been supported by oligarchy going all the way back to the seafaring Republic Democracy of Athens, which got itself curb stomped by Sparta because what ended up happening was it was chasing the money. All right, so let's continue forward here. What I want to pick up here is when Trump comes into power, Trump does two important things. Number one is he basically allows them to launch a popular crusade. It wasn't popular, but it had the faux popular thing against the fact that we want misinformation. We want news czars. We want NewsGuard, which was a way of the establishment to control the flow of information. Because what they realized was the old model of using propaganda, which worked to great effect during 9/11, and because they could see what people were saying to get people to rally around the flag, wasn't working anymore because people weren't buying what they were selling. And it didn't even matter if they were selling one side as the good side and one side as the bad side. The people had revolted. So what they realized was that they wanted to go to a single propaganda thing. Now, you would have 10,000 different flavors of the same, fertilizer sundae that they were feeding you every day. Go eat your non-meat, go eat your bug proteins and enjoy it. There's actually a really funny video we watched, was it like 2 or 3 weeks ago, about a woman who tried to be on that diet and she hated life so much. I mean, they were making fun of her, and look, if it's all you got, I get it, but she was like,
what's her face?
Yeah, the Canadian chick, I forget what her name is, that was funny.
What's her face?
What's her face? Okay, what's her face? What's her face's name is What's Her Face. So anyway, that's funny how that works out. But anyway, so what ends up happening is they push this forward, and as the thing gets pushed, they come to the realization, the elites, that we have to control the information completely. We can't allow dissenting opinions. I was in the dissident right, whatever you want to call it. People wanted to hear something different. I mean, even when I got fired from my job, because I got to see this firsthand before the lockdowns really got fully there, the cancel culture began. Block you from PayPal, block you from fundraising, block you from GoCaring, YouFundMe, GoFundMe, YouCaring, all these things, block for saying things that people said for most of Western civilization. And look, were there more extreme people who were caught up in that? Absolutely, but that wasn't what it was about. It was about the demonization of defining everyone who doesn't agree with you as extreme. If you don't support trannies running the sports thing, you're a bigot. And you understand, and you've seen how far it's gone, and you've seen there's no end to it. And the reason is it's not really in support of any position. It's not because they really care about the people who charge. The next big thing has been what they pushed. It's rather the idea that they're destroying bonds of loyalty between people and any sense of sanity and normalcy. Why else do you go ahead and get kids with the jabs, Because you want people to hate themselves so much they won't fight back anymore. So, in all of this, we've seen the push for against disinformation, as they've defined it, fake news and all that, be used as a one-side weapon that the Republicans never try to stop. The Democrats only push for it, and why? Because they're both on the same side. That's what you begin to understand when you watch this, that the oligarchy who funds them both and who fundamentally gets the money that comes out of government and sort of sanctions it through the banking industry indirectly is what you're fighting against. And this is the battle that is the long war. It is the oligarchy, the global elites, against the people of all nations. That's including Americans. That's including Russians. That's including Chinese if they are out there. They're trapped like bugs waiting to be squashed in Shanghai. It's really sad out there. Same thing throughout Europe. And what we are seeing is that since old techniques are not working, they've been ratcheting up the pressure. Good morning, Vicky. Good to see you. God bless.
Did she get my text?
Dana wants to know if she got you. You tell her. I'm not doing this in the middle of the show.
Sorry, Vicky. I was really sick.
Okay, Dana's going to text you. She hasn't been feeling. Okay,
Text.
fine. Dana's going to text you. That's fine. All right, that's fine. Anyway, back to the show here. This interruption is brought to you by the letter D for Dana. All right, so let me pick it back up where I want to pick it up. So we have this problem that the nationalists and the globalists are going at one another, and the globalists were losing badly. So what happens? We see a global effort between elements in the deep state of China and elements of the deep state of the United States to launch COVID, right? And whoever else was involved. You can look at the World Health Organization, you can look at Bill Gates, Gavi, whatever you want to look into the deep thing. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the fact is, it's kind of funny that Moderna's solution has literally half the same code in key elements as does the actual, thing that was released. Okay, so now there's a global problem. There's a global lockdown. Well, now you're having hyper-nationalism, right? And so, on the one hand, it looks like the globalists are winning. But what did? They took a nationalist system where nations could theoretically serve the interests of people, and they've made it into a zero-sum game, so that nations now have to go to war with one another. Why? Because they broke the resource chains. They broke the supply chains. They broke the ability of things to go. So the globalists are saying, we want these big solutions that go beyond this, these big causes, and nations are being set up as the fall guy. And usually the sort of opposition parties of the right who've been fighting for, either for the science that they've been lied to, or they've been fighting for sort of insane political views, have been getting curb stomped at the election offices all across the world. Actually, Latin America has become almost straight up communist at this point again, because people are looking to survive and they're looking for people who at least offer a solution. The pro tip, if you're involved in politics, if there's a problem, telling people it will all work out eventually isn't good politics. It might be good policy, but you're never going to win an election that way. And it's kind of no accident that the crisis, the Rahm Emanuel model, comes forward. So as these crises continue to build, now we have a world war in the offing, and we see a us versus them philosophy where we are seeing sanctions whose real targets are the civilians of all the countries, whether it be the Russians who can't buy things outside the world, or whether it be the Americans. I was reading a number about the inflation numbers around the world here. We think our inflation's bad, and it is, but just a couple quick numbers I was reading. These are from Bitcoin magazine. The global inflation rates that are being reported: America 8.5%, Russia 16.7%, Brazil 11.3%, Argentina 55.1%, Turkey 61.1%, Venezuela 284%. Just to give you an idea, so everyone's in the crapper. The yen's going down the toilet, the euro's going down the toilet. The ruble is holding up, but even then, the cost of gold is going down, which is eventually going to affect them very heavily. And China's got their real estate crisis. So all this is being broken down, and what are we looking for? Well, the governments of the world are looking for new threats, and they're looking for a war. And as a war goes out, they're defining everyone who speaks against it as evil and as opposition and as traitors, like you've been seeing go out there quite a bit. Let's see. Give me 1 second. 1 second. I wanted to bring one thing up here. I wanted to hear, and we're going to get into the story part of this. So I want to bring this up in the context. Now we're going to start talking about what's been happening with Twitter, what's been happening with the American government, and what's been happening to control social media. So you've seen and you've witnessed the disconnection of the global internet into different areas, where now you can't get Russian news, you can't get Sputnik, you can't get Russia Today. And look, were they propaganda? Sure, of course they were propaganda. Just in the same way that CNN's been run by the CIA for years. Just in the same way that, all of these entities are propaganda for different sides. Of course they are. And the point is, by seeing all the different sides is how people can intelligently begin to determine the future. But what they've decided now is you only get to see one side, or you get to see a whole bunch of different variations of the one side. You can have any color you want as long as it's pink. You see what I'm saying? So what they've been doing is they've been moving forward very quickly to develop this disinformation thing to a point where it's actual policy. And I want to talk about that in light of what's been happening with Twitter. A lot of people are excited that Elon Musk is going on Twitter, and Elon Musk has said some things that are promising, where he says, like he was posting the other day, that he was showing how the Overton window has moved, where he's considered now to the right, where he hasn't moved, just the far left has gone that far. And it sounds really promising. But in the same way that Donald Trump came on the scene just at the right time to offer an escape valve solution, so is Elon Musk doing the same thing with Twitter, because Twitter is not really offering you the free speech. The algorithm remains where it does, in the sense that we aren't allowed to say certain things. And I want to share a quote. This is from Elon Musk's Twitter, that he said this on April 26th with respect to his purchase, about what he supports and doesn't support, right? So he says, by free speech, he said originally, the extreme antibody reaction from those who fear free speech says it all, which makes him sound like the good guy, like he's going to do something. But listen carefully to what he said in the following tweet, because this is the heart of how they get you every time. By free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law. I am against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask government to pass laws to that effect. Therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of people. So Elon's speech is not going out there as a free speech absolutist. Elon Musk isn't going out there to resurrect the old internet. Elon's speech is being put out there as a pony, if you really want to understand it right, to say that you'll have to have laws if you want limitations on your freedom of speech. Okay. That's where we're going to pick up the story. I want to read you this. So this is from WION News. This is from India. And this is what we've been dealing with. Biden's plan to set up a truth ministry gets panned from his opponents. And I'll put, since I'm doing it this way, I'm going to put the links on so you guys can read along with me here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring this up, and you're going to see exactly what's being put in. The reason I'm all pissed off and doing a show this morning is because I want you to see firsthand what it is exactly that's being planned for us, and that we are now dealing with a real truth ministry. And hopefully you'll understand. I'm sure you guys will, and you'll share what's useful here for people to understand that.
Isn't that the thing out of 1984?
Yeah.
Truth?
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Were they ready?
Exactly.
Oh,
Oceania was always at war with Eurasia. Didn't you know that?
Huh?
That was the name for it. The England in 1984 is called Airstrip 1 as part of the Anglosphere that was called Oceania, and they were always fighting against Eurasia, which was Russia, or East Asia. East Asia was the ally against Eurasia. Yeah, it is funny how life resembles bad fiction, right? These people aren't very creative, so they're going back to the greatest generation. It's just like going to Hollywood. All you have is remakes of the old movies. Anyway, this piece is by Manash Joshi. It was published yesterday at 1:17 p.m. It says IST. I assume that's India Standard Time. USA's Department of Homeland Security is setting up a new disinformation governance board, reported Political Playbook. This board is being set up to coordinate countering misinformation related to Homeland Security. So, in other words, if the government does something awful and we report on it, you're going to go sit in a gulag. And you guys have seen this. This was what they were beta testing with COVID. Look at the terrible thing that was Australia. All of us looked at that with horror. The government looked at it in America, in Britain, in Canada, in Western Europe, and said, hey, that's a pretty good model. Let's do that.
Yeah, they took notes.
They took notes, absolutely. They found where our pressure points were, and they said, oh, well, if people won't accept that for that, they'll accept it if they stand against patriotism. We can get the right wing on board. Just say they're against the Russians. Have them blow up something. You can see where this is going. It will focus specifically on irregular migration and Russia. So if you're complaining about the fact that our border is a sieve, that we have $33 billion to fight other places, but we can't find $11 billion to defend our own border, then I guess you're a terrorist. Because that's how they defined it. Remember, this is through the Department of Homeland Security. This is Alexander Mayorkas, who said the single greatest threat to America right today is white supremacy. So these are the people who are in charge. And why do they go after this? Because they don't want high agency people. On the one hand, it's not really about white people. It's about the fact that people are able to offer resistance, but the people who are able to offer resistance, by and large, who do for genetic and cultural reasons, are white people. So we get targeted, and we're the bad guys, and that's how it is. And you're not allowed to say anything. If you said the same things in reverse, they would attack you. I understand this. I fought this war a long time ago. But this is a war against everybody, whatever color you are. And if they seem to be your friend today, lesbians thought the deep state had their back. Guess not. They're getting in the end. So what? You're still getting screwed in the end. The only difference is this time is tits as well as the bottom. Messed up, but it's the reality of the world. So the report said Nina Jankowicz will be the executive director of the board. She was previously a disinformation fellow at the Wilson Center. Who's a disinformation fellow? What the hell does that even mean? Yeah, what's that even mean? Failure.
What's that even mean?
She has also advised the Ukrainian foreign ministry in the past. I wonder how that all connects, right? So this is being reported. I'm being reported by an Indian news. So India is saying literally we're making a truth ministry, right? Give me 1 second. I have to find it. God, how many ads are on this stupid site? I gotta find the bottom of it. Give me 1 second here. Thank you. Was there more? Okay, I guess that's the bottom of the story. Oh, read more. Okay, I missed it. These steps reportedly being taken by Biden administration have started a fierce online debate. Biden critics are equating the board with a ministry of truth from Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. In his book, in the book, this ministry, despite having truth in its name, works as a propaganda ministry. Boy, did Orwell call it or what. We're literally going to have our ministry of truth soon, said a Twitter user. So to make sure there are no abuses of power, we are going to create a hyper-partisan, government-controlled ministry of truth, tweeted Donald Trump Jr. When I get to the Senate, I'll defund the Biden administration's Ministry of Truth. This is downright scary, said J.D. Vance, a Trump-endorsed Senate candidate. The Biden administration is creating a DHS Disinformation Governance Board is nothing more than the Ministry of Truth to silence opposition. The First Amendment was designed to prevent the government from doing this. The Second Amendment was designed to stop them if they tried, tweeted Tim Young. And they're giving different people who are talking about this. I want to just continue down here 1 second, see if there's... So it's just showing some different feedback. But the thing is, they're creating a truth ministry. All right. And so against that truth ministry, we have the pleasant distraction on the scene of Elon Musk buying Twitter. Just in the way that when the crypto market was rising, Elon Musk jumped into Dogecoin, made a couple people at the bottom a whole bunch of money, and then tanked the rest of the market for the rest of us by what he went and said on Saturday Night Live and others. Funny how he keeps doing that.
Elon Musk is the embodiment of keck.
In a lot of ways, he is. But what he does is, and he made his money. All right, his money goes back to emerald mines in South Africa, which you don't have unless you're long-time deep state, because that goes back into the Rhodes family and the Rothschilds. You can go trace it. Emeralds, diamonds, gold, frankly, if you go back far enough, slaves. All these things run through those circuits. But what we also saw, like with Tesla, how did he make money? Well, he got government subsidies. So Musk has been deep in government money and government contracts forever. And so he's been set up as the next populist to go forward, who's seen as an apolitical figure. Now he's a boogeyman for the left. He's a hero for the right, just like Trump was. Trump was a fun, weird celebrity dude. Boogeyman for the left, hero for the right. They're running the same sort of scam in a lot of ways, where Elon Musk told you he's going to only follow what the law says. Well, this is what the law says they're going to do. And what are the laws going to do? So I'm going to give you two different angles on this, because I think this is important. So let's go first and say what the EU said, because remember, we have nations now against global. So as Musk plans to change Twitter, and this is from Reuters, EU reminds him we have rules, by John Chalmers, and this was published on the 26th. The European Union's internal market chief said on Tuesday that Elon Musk could adapt Twitter if he wishes after he acquires the social media site, but warned the billionaire the bloc has strict rules for online programs or platforms to tackle illegal content. It will be up to Twitter to adapt themselves to our rules, Thierry Breton told Reuters and one other media outlet, in the deal sealed Monday by Tesla's chief executive to buy Twitter for $44 billion. I think Musk knows Europe very well. He knows very well we have some rules for the automotive industry, and he understands them. So in Europe, in order to protect freedom of speech and to protect individuals, any companies will have to fulfill this obligation. So what are they protecting you from? Well, we don't want you to hear ideas that are dangerous to you, ideas that we don't put out there with trusted sources like you see on YouTube, by CNN and by all these sources, and you can't find them anymore. It's the dead internet thing. It's like that test. Go on Google, look up any search term. It says 8 billion results, and when you're done, you find about 50 pages when you're done, if even. A lot of these you only find 11, 12, whatever. All right. Because they're limiting what you can say. Musk, the world's richest person, calls himself a free speech absolutist, which he just showed you in his own tweet he isn't, and has criticized Twitter's moderation of a hugely... He said that he's going to follow whatever the extent of the law is, and if you don't like how much free speech there is, change the law. So you know what all these people are doing?
They're
changing the law! That's right! So
breaking the law!
They're making the law, they're creating, that's why they created the Ministry of Truth, so they can change the law to say what you can and can't say, and Musk justifies it in their eyes, and the Democrats will do it, and all the EU will do it, and what will happen is the Republicans are like, well, we might need this, we might find useful, and it never goes away. The Republicans never get rid of any of this crap.
Was this all done intentionally to set up?
Which is why
to
this
put
program
free
set up
speech
the
up there on the guillotine chopper board.
exactly. You know what? What they're gonna do is they're gonna make little proto guillotines, and they'll go.
I think it was on purpose.
It, this is what I'm saying. See, the wife is smart. She didn't know what I was going to say ahead of time. She's exactly right. But let's put in some more evidence to fulfill the thing. You do. Musk, the world's richest person, calls himself a free speech absolutist, criticized Twitter's moderation of a hugely influential platform that is populated by millions of users and global leaders. The EU has contents under which content forbidden offline is also forbidden online. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example of just one thing in the EU. Like, a lot of things you can't show images of certain things, because we'll say, even if you're criticizing it, like, no, you're not allowed to have that knowledge. You're not allowed to have those books. And you know what? The thing is, whether you endorse an idea or don't endorse it, don't you think, I mean, for America at least, and for the West broadly, having access to information is how we make good decisions. We can look at things and determine they're bad. And yeah, do people behave abominably on the internet? Maybe. Is there an argument to be made, like Musk has made, that maybe if everyone was an authenticated user, they wouldn't behave so abominably? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to be said for everyone treating the internet like an anonymous bathroom stall. If Twitter, which for better or worse is going to be the main place, if people were forced to say things under their own name and they were doing it, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people who don't want to participate in it either. I have support for anything that elevates discourse.
Done everything in our
We have, and we've paid the price for it. And you know what? The thing is, other people don't, and other people haven't. And, that's a different thing. But the idea that you can't say things. Like, if I was to go out there and say Christ is Lord, or if I was to say, that marriage is between a man and a woman, in the EU, that can be defined as hate speech. And I believe that. I believe that. And not only that, but history has demonstrated that. But anyway. Continuing, under a Digital Services Act, and that's why, the groomers are getting mad. Under Digital Services Act, agreed by the EU's 27 member states and lawmakers last week, how the timing of this all comes together. Alphabet, Google, Meta, which is Facebook, and other large online platforms will risk hefty fines if they don't control illegal content. You see how these things are always all timed together? That's the chain reaction thing. Breton says big platforms of more than 45 million users would have to have more moderators than smaller ones, including moderators in every European language, and they would have to open their algorithms to regulators. So there was a little something called Sarbanes-Oxley back in the day that was a tax code that came in. And what it did was it made it impossible for small businesses to comply. So only big businesses could comply with the requirements of tax regulations, such that only businesses that survived were big businesses, because the big government regulated small businesses out of their ability to meet the rules that were out there. The same thing is happening with the centralization of media, because going back to the long war of the media against you, they want a few platforms that appear like they're friendly, that allow maybe certain superficial openings, but that fundamentally are being used to push the propaganda. You don't think the CIA is just going to let Twitter fall into the hands of an unfriendly source, do you? When the whole literally backbone of the internet was created by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, so that they could shape opinions. They get to people. You look at like why young people revolt in a lot of places. They get to them at an age where they're so young they can't reach them, or where they don't even have the chance to process what's happening out there. And this is part of what the rest of the world is fighting against. This is why the Russians have the support they do. And some people even look at China and say, well, at least they're not America. They're not supporting these terrible ideas. No, they just lock their people in houses and say, if you don't, literally, I was reading this in Shanghai, that if you don't get your third booster, we're not going to provide water or electricity to you. But that's what they want for the future. They'll be like, hey, we have to live in austerity. Go eat your lentils, like Bloomberg said a couple weeks ago. All right. So under the DSA, big tech companies face fines of up to 6% of their global revenue for violating the rules, while repeated breaches could see them banned from doing business in the EU. The new rules ban advertising aimed at children or based on religion, gender, race, and political opinions. So basically, you're not allowed to talk about anything that matters in the EU. You're just allowed to say how great they are, that Ukraine's good, Russia's bad, and go to war. And this is what they're doing. And America's trying to do the same thing. Critics of Musk's takeover of Twitter fear it will mean less moderation, the reinstatement of banned individuals, including former U.S. President Donald Trump. I mean, why shouldn't he be able to say what he wants? And look, a lot of times he's a buffoon, but people should be able to hear it. And the fact that people worship him, that's a sick thing. Let me tell you something.
People should have the right to make complete fools out of themselves. If they
people do. And you know what? The people who are running this are doing so, but we have the right to listen.
I meant free speech-wise.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You have the right to be stupid.
Breton said he had no intention in interfering in the Trump question because such matters would now be regulated in Europe and company boards would not have a say. Remember, the information space does not belong to our private company. The information space is part of our responsibility of politicians. Like territorial airspace, excuse me, this is interesting, like territorial space, airspace, our digital space is our responsibility to organize. So let's say you try to fly a plane over an airport for very good reasons. They'll say, unless you're landing there and being guided in, get the hell out of here. They're doing that. They're saying now with the information space, well, it's all an information war. So since we're going to keep our governments afloat, you can't toggle things you believe. They're destroying the First Amendment because it turns out what people think is not what they want, and they've decided what they want is more important than what you think. This has been going on for a very long time in Europe, but it's now coming to America. So I want to talk about, before we go into what they actually put here, let's talk about who Biden brought in there. So her name is Nina Jankowicz, and this piece is from the New York Post, but there's plenty of them about there. And I love the headline of this on April 28th, and so I'm going to read it to you. Which useful idiot thought such a clearly partisan hack should be Biden's disinformation czar? Insane as it is that the Department of Homeland Security has created a disinformation governance board, let's call it the Ministry of Truth, it's utter madness that the woman running it is Nina Jankowicz, who's a veteran disinformation spreader. She embraced and promoted the bogus Clinton campaign created Trump Russia dossier, and she waged war on the on the Post's true and accurate reporting of Hunter Biden's laptop. And by the way, if you want to know what Hunter Biden's laptop it would tell you that corrupt business was being run through Ukraine to the tune of many, many millions and billions of dollars. And what was it? The first global state was being set up in Ukraine a lot of ways. And we don't know all the details of it, but there's a reason we're fighting so hard for Ukraine, and it isn't because it just sits on the Russia border. I tell you that. That Mariupol story still has to solve itself. As our first laptop stories ran, the AP reported disinformation efforts say there are multiple red flags that raise doubt about their authenticity, including questions whether the laptop actually belongs to Hunter Biden, said Nina Jankowicz. She also told the AP we should view it as a Trump campaign product. And this woman has a long track record of being a hack. This isn't just one thing. I just picked this because it's funny. Jankowicz soon shared another report casting yet more doubt on the provenance of the New York New York Post Hunter Biden story, and she tweeted that same day that emails don't need to be altered to be part of an influence campaign. Voters deserve that context, not a fairy tale about a laptop repair shop. Wednesday, another of her old, let's see. Actually, let's see. We'll skip over that because those are just tweets. Wednesday, another of her old tweets came back to the fore. Back on the laptop from hell, apparently Biden notes 50 former national security officials and 5 former CIA heads believe the laptop is a Russian influence operation. And that shows you that all the people who work in the deep state all lean one way. And it's not left, although it's kind of left, but it's that they're globalists. It's that they believe that the institutions should be run indirectly, that people shouldn't have a say, that nations suck, and that populism should be killed. They do it, they act that way, and they use money to make it happen. Trump says Russia, Russia, Russia. Her defense. For those who believe this tweet is the key to all my views, it is simply a direct quote from both candidates during the final presidential debate. If you look at my timeline, you will see I was live tweeting that evening. But it was a direct quote of what she chose to quote. As for all my views, there's her October 24th, 2020 tweet about the nuance of the alleged Biden laptop kerfluffle. Plus, another 6 months later, March 16th, 2021, claiming the intelligence community has a high degree of confidence the Kremlin used proxies to push influence narratives, including misleading or unsubstantiated claims against President Biden, a clear nod to the alleged Hunter laptop. So, she's basically been out there carrying water for them a long time. Look, she's a clear left-wing partisan from her days from working at the National Democratic Institute to her Fulbright Clinton fellowship, to her gig at the left-leaning Wilson Center, where she repeatedly did media hit pieces with NPR, CNN, PBS, and so on, while placing New York Times and Washington Post op-eds. Hiring her for this job shows just how detached from reality and broad American society the entire Biden team has become. Plus, why does the administration even need another disinformation czar when it already has Jen Psaki? And I'll tell you why. It's because under Mayorkas, they're going to go after the American people as terrorists. Disinformation. If you go out there and say, hey, you won't get so sick if you take certain things, IVM, HCQ, NAC, all these things, Even, you want to know, even go so far, that's probably why they're banning menthol cigarettes. You want to know why? Because certain minorities who they want to have get more problems are blocking their nicotine receptors by their bad habits so that certain other problems can't cross their blood-brain barrier. You want to see, this is the reality of the world we live in, but people wouldn't believe it. Because they're like, oh, well, the government's not that evil. You think? What world have you been living in? Who do you think's been killing people? And you know what? For all the people who died in wars between governments, over history, 90% of the people who've been killed have been killed by governments against their own people. That's the war you are fighting. But let's see. So we've done all this as backdrop. So the White House has a wonderful new declaration for the future. Y'all want to hear this. And I'm going to read it to you verbatim. You know, we got 3 pages of the most brilliant oratory since Thomas Jefferson, since Patrick Henry. And when it's done, I'm going to read the press release that came out with it so you can know what nations are on board with it. And what you might notice is it looks like a lot like the new coalition of the willing that's picking a global war. Now, at the time I'm doing this, it's easy to look at this and say, oh, God, we're so awful. The Russians are the same thing. The Russians are doing the same sort of oratory, just the other way around, saying, how many cities can we nuke? You know, and it's just a different way of doing it for a different culture. But here we go. I should get a voice for this. A declaration for the future of the internet. We are united by a belief in the potential of digital technologies to promote connectivity, democracy, peace, the rule of law, sustainable development. That's like you go live in the Hive cities. And the enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms. As we increasingly work, communicate, connect, engage, learn, and enjoy leisure time using digital technologies, our reliance on an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure internet will continue to grow. That's why they've literally shut off every source they don't like for the last 5 years. Yet we are also aware of the risks inherent in that reliance and the challenges we face. We call for a new declaration for the future of the internet that includes all partners who actively support a future for the internet that is an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure. So basically what they're saying is everyone who agrees with us in everything we think, you're allowed to have access to the internet. The rest of you, get back to the reservation. We further affirm our commitment to protecting and respecting human rights online and across the digital ecosystem. Partners in this declaration intend to work toward an environment that reinforces our democratic system and promotes active participation of every citizen in democratic processes, secures and protects individuals' privacy, maintains secure and reliable connectivity, resists efforts to splinter the global internet, this is exactly what they're causing, and promotes a free and competitive global economy. Partners in this declaration invite other partners who share this vision to join us in working together with civil society and other stakeholders. That's to say the globalists who are going to run the show instead of the countries that are now following along, to affirm guiding principles for our role in the role of the future internet. Okay. Now the text gets a little smaller. Reclaiming the promise of the internet. And, you know, let me offer a counterexample. This is from the dissident opposition. Let people say what they think and stop trying to censor us. You know, if people don't like what they're saying in a certain area, they won't go there. They won't listen. And if you're mad that people don't believe what you want, maybe you ought to say, you believe in democracy. Democracy is the rule of the people. Okay? At least it's supposed to be. It's never actually been. But you know what? It ends up with a lynch mob because every time you try to control them, they don't want what you're selling. God, okay, I'm getting mad. The immense promise that accompanied the development of the internet stemmed from its design. It is an open network of networks, a single interconnected communication system for all of humanity. The stable and secure operation of the internet's unique identifier systems have, from the beginning, been governed by a multi-stakeholder approach to avoid internet fragmentation, which continues to be an essential part of our vision. For businesses, entrepreneurs, and the innovation ecosystem as a whole, interconnection promises better access to customers and fairer competition. For artists and creators, new audience. For everyone, unfettered access to knowledge. With the creation of the internet came a swell in innovation, vibrant communication, increased cross-border data flow, and market growth, as well as the innovation of new digital products and services that now permeate every aspect of our daily lives. That's fine. That's true. I don't have an issue with that. Over the last 2 decades, however, we have witnessed serious challenges to this vision emerge. Access to the open internet is limited by some authoritarian governments, and online platforms and digital tools are being used increasingly to repress freedom of expression and deny other human rights and fundamental freedoms. I agree with that, by the way. It is happening. That's what Twitter does. That's what Facebook does. That's what the algorithm does. That's what YouTube does. That's why I can't come on here and give you a show where I talk about what's happening with COVID responses, because they'll be, this is disinformation. You see how this works? That's the law of the internet they want. Mr. Free Speech Must says, I can't do that unless you give me a law. They're like, hey, wait a second, we got one for you. This is what's happening. State-sponsored or condoned malicious behaviors on the rise. Takes one to know one, right? Including the spread of disinformation and cybercrime, such as ransomware, affecting the security and resilience of critical infrastructure while holding at risk vital public and private assets. And who's making those keys? Hey, good to see you, NSA. That's you guys. I know it. And yeah, we're not the only ones. They all do it. At the same time, countries have erected firewalls and taken other technical measures, such as internet shutdowns, to restrict access to journalism, information, and services in ways that are contrary to international human rights commitments and obligations. So, if you're going to talk about that, how many press interviews did Trump do compared to what Biden does? Anytime he goes out there, you're afraid his Alzheimer's is going to show. And I don't want to make fun of people who are sick like that, but you know what? They put someone in there who you're not allowed to criticize because of his sickness, because the things he's putting through are even sicker. The guy's nuts. The one who's going to follow him is no better. I mean, the line of succession basically is America's greatest misses. Concerned or independent actions of some governments and private actors have sought to abuse the openness of the internet governance, uh, open of internet governance and related processes to advance the closed vision. Moreover, the once decentralized internet economy has become highly concentrated, and many people have legitimate concerns about the privacy and quantity and security of their personal data collected and stored online. Like let's talk about Jeff Bezos, him owning Washington Post and how much Amazon runs. No one ever complained about that. No one complained about getting zucked because it only goes one way. Online platforms have enabled an increase in the spread of illegal or harmful content. Look, there are things everyone agrees there shouldn't be, like kiddie porn, for instance. Nobody wants that. But the idea that you have free speech about political ideologies, yeah, you should have that. Even bad ideologies that I think are bad. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to say them, but we should be able to look at them, consider them, and talk intelligently about them. Anyway, the content that can threaten the safety of individuals and contribute to radicalization and violence. So basically, radicalization, that's the system's word for anything that makes you disagree with what we want to do is bad, harmful, and or illegal. That's what happens. That's what they call it. Disinformation and foreign malign activities used to sow division and conflict between individuals and groups and societies, undermining respect for and protection of human rights and democratic institutions. So what happens is people who don't like the system point out the hypocrisies in the system and point out the obvious lies, and that's why they're branded as terrorists. That's why Julian Assange is being extradited to the United States. He pointed out his crime was not telling you a lie. His crime was telling you the truth at a time that they didn't want it to be heard. So here's where we get dystopian, our vision. God knows. Honestly, it's like looking through blinders. We believe that we should meet these challenges by working toward a shared vision for the future of the internet that recommits governments and relevant authorities to defending human rights and fostering equitable economic prosperity. We intend to ensure that the use of digital technology reinforces, not weakens, democracy. So they're basically saying they want to control outcomes, right? And say we're going to protect the system, and respect for human rights. Offers opportunities for innovation in the digital ecosystem, including businesses large and small, and maintains connections between our societies. We intend to work together to protect and fortify the multi-stakeholder system of internet governance. That's your global elite. They're like, you're not going to stop Davos. You're not going to stop Bilderberger. We're going to shut you, your nation, and everything down. We are going to deplatform a whole frigging nation. You can be a nuclear power. You know what? Suck this. That's literally how we've been behaving. And tell me if it doesn't fit what you're seeing. We intend to work together to protect and maintain a high level of security, privacy protection, stability, and resilience of the technical infrastructure of the internet. We affirm our commitment to promote and sustain an internet that is an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure, to ensure the internet reinforces democratic principles and human rights and fundamental freedoms, offers opportunities for collaborative research and commerce, is developed, governed, and deployed in an inclusive way so that unserved and underserved communities, particularly those coming online for the first time, can navigate it safely. So they're promising a giant safe space that's going to promote wokeism. Anytime you see inclusive, that means forced diversity. And tell me it doesn't end there every single time, where you lose your job and you're say it's not based on competence, it's not based on the quality ideas. They use the word equity. Equity and equality are different. Equality says you have equal opportunity. Equity seems you have equal outcomes. So what they're going to say is, well, you can't have your job because we need to listen to what this person has to say. And that's literally how they just pushed that woman onto the Supreme Court. Anyway, terrible. Let's see here. With personal data and protections in place, and is governed by a multi-stakeholder process. In short, an internet that can deliver on the promise of connecting humankind and helping societies and democracies to thrive. It should operate as a single decentralized network of networks with global reach and governed through the multi-stakeholder approach, whereby governments and relevant authorities partner with academics, civil society, the private sector, technical communities, and others. All right, so academia, left-wing center. Civil society, that's the NGOs, the left-wing center. The private sector, woke corporatism, woke capital, that's BlackRock, that's Larry Fink, okay? The technical community and others, okay? So the one guy who's stuck, down there, working in office space, keeping this afloat. So what they're basically saying is, these are the legitimate entities. We're going to shape your future, and we're going to work on this. At the same time, governments are saying, okay, you need laws? Here they are. Digital technologies reliant on the internet will yield the greatest dividends while they operate as an open, free, global, interoperable, and reliable, secure system. They should be produced and used and governed in ways that are trustworthy, free, and fair commerce, avoid unfair discrimination between, and a secure and effective choice for individual users, foster fair competition, and encourage innovation, promote and protect human rights, and foster societies. And let's say this human rights thing, I want you to say, when they say human rights, we all support human rights, but what they define as a human right is often very tricky. Go take a look at that. So human rights and fundamental freedoms and the well-being of all individuals are protected. Well, what if I feel bad because someone says something mean about me? Am I protected? Yeah, we're going to shut them down. That's what they want. All can connect to the internet no matter where they are located, including through increased access, affordability, and digital skills. Individuals and business can trust the safety and confidentiality of the digital technologies they use and that their privacy is protected. These are the same people who were running Echelon, who were running basically ops, who literally banned or got rid under Obama. They got rid of the Smith-Mundt Act that banned the government from propagandizing its own people in the West. Did you hear anything about that from the Democrats or Republicans or anyone? No. So we're propagandized every damn day. Businesses of all sizes can innovate, compete, and thrive on their merits on a fair and competitive ecosystem. Infrastructure is designed to be secure, interoperable, reliable, and sustainable. Sustainable is another problem word. And technology is used to promote pluralism. That's bringing people in who nobody would want to hear and forcing them to the front. And freedom of expression, sustainability, that word. Inclusive economic growth. That's economic redistribution. That's global communism. And the fight against global climate change. That's where they go ahead and say, we can't afford to have meat or food anymore because the planet's dying. Go eat your bug protein, or better yet, go eat one another. This is where this is going, and you think,
I have an idea.
What's your idea?
All those words that normal people don't have any idea what they mean.
Make a little glossary.
Somebody needs to write a liberal dictionary or a thesaurus because no normal person understands what any of those
Mark
words mean.
Twain had a friend, Ambrose Bierce, who wrote a book called The Devil's Dictionary, which was a critique. It was a critique of what things actually meant versus what they said they meant. It's absolutely hilarious for night. Someone should bring that back up. If you make that book or that article, you're coming on my show, I will let you share that. Someone should do that. Dana's out.
Interdimensional, multiple,
But you can see it's all their little buzzwords. And look, global climate change. Why do we like climate change? Because it's an international problem that requires the spending of a lot of money, that takes people away from the land, that takes people away from the ability to grow things, that takes people away from self-sufficiency. Say, you are evil. You're killing us all and our future. If they cared about our futures and our ability to protect our progeny, maybe they wouldn't attack the family every moment where we used to be able to do that. But the state wants control of everything. All right, let's continue. Principles to promote this vision. The partners in this declaration intend to uphold a range of key principles set out below regarding the internet and digital technologies. To promote these principles within existing multilateral and multi-stakeholder fora, that's forums in the plural, to translate these principles into concrete policies and actions, then to work together to promote this vision globally while respecting each other's regulatory autonomy within our own jurisdictions and in accordance with our respective domestic laws and international legal obligations. So what they're saying is we want free speech, but you can limit it wherever you want, right? We just want it to sound good. These principles are not legally binding, but should be used rather as reference for public policymakers as well as citizens, businesses, and civil society organizations. So, protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Let's see what they say. Dedicated ourselves in conducting and executing our respective domestic authorities to respect human rights, including as reflected in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, more UN control of us, right? As well as the principles of rule of law, legitimate purpose, non-arbitrariness. And by the way, I would love to see non-arbitrariness. I'd love to see someone who was blowing up Portland be arrested the same way those people were on January 6th, but that ain't going to happen. Yeah, or the people in Canada, Arthur Pavlovsky got treated worse than people who blew up buildings. But anyway, effective oversight and transparency, both online and offline, and call upon others to do the same. Promote online safety and continue to strengthen our work to combat violence online, including sexual and gender-based violence, as well as child sexual exploitation, to make the internet a safe and secure place for everyone, particularly women, children, and young people. And I'm going to say something here. And look, nobody wants to see anyone get hurt. No one wants to see sexual violence. But I'm going to tell you, they use these words very selectively. If a white person attacks a black person, it's a race crime. If a black person attacks a white person, it's Friday in Chicago, and who gives a damn? So if you're going to define these things, you better start defining things where there aren't in-groups and out-groups, because that's something they do. And I'm telling you something, with these child sex exploitations, you know what? You're seeing that happen all the time, the normalization of that old P at the end of LGBT. And I'll tell you something, carnality was always going to go there. You chase a sin, you're going to have to get more perverse. It's what the devil wants for you. I mean, and a lot of you don't think that way, but honestly, think of it this way. Have you ever found people who are into fetishism who decide, oh, that's enough, I'm just going to stop there? Or do they always go further and further? This is what happens.
Remember I told you that there was something in the prophetic about bestiality is going to become
I'm sure it is, Well, I mean, Twitter, let's be honest. Twitter's been used for child trafficking for years, and no one's cared about that. ISIS used it to promote their platform. But you have someone go on there with a right-wing nationalist view, and they'll be shut down in 5 seconds. All right, promote safe and equitable use of the internet for everyone without discrimination based on sex, race, color, ethnic, social origin, genetic features, language, religion, or belief, political or any other opinion, membership, or of an indigenous population, property, birth, disability, age, gender, identity, or sexual orientation. Look, I agree the internet should be for everybody, but here's the thing: if you're not allowed to discriminate on religion, what people belief, what people believe, politics, you're not allowed to have an opinion anymore. Do you see how this goes? There's one set of opinions, or maybe there's one narrow things. I'm like, we can fight over whether shades are gonna be red or blue, but we're not allowed to fight over anything that means that's a big problem, because what it means is we have no role in shaping our society. We are just a collective and a clan that's being led by the tail, and that's the problem of it. Reaffirm our commitment that actions taken by governments, authorities, and digital service, including online platforms, to reduce illegal and harmful content, which they get to define, and activities online be consistent with international human rights law, including the right to freedom of expression while encouraging diversity of opinion and pluralism without fear of censorship, harassment, or intimidation. I mean, these people are the worst censors out there. I mean, it's just the double speaks crazy, but what do you expect for the Ministry of Truth? As Orwell told you, it was lies. Pretty soon, I suspect next time we go out there, Lloyd Austin will be talking about his embrace of the Ministry of Love that we're now going to call the Department of Defense. I mean, why not? Let's just go full in, right? At least he'll have a new aesthetic. Protect and respect human rights and fundamental freedoms across the digital ecosystem while providing access to meaningful remedies for human rights violations and abuses consistent with international human rights law, and refrain from misusing or abusing the internet or algorithmic tools or techniques for unlawful surveillance, which they've done every time, oppression and repression that do not align with international human rights principles, including developing social scorecards or other mechanisms of domestic social control or pre-crime detention and arrest. I love that they put this in here because that's what they're doing. You can go look in Bologna that they're literally putting this out there with the green passes they were doing in Israel. What's happening in China, and at every step of the way, these apps are being used to control you. They're being used to say who is a good car or who is a bad car, and this is coming. So they're saying the right things, but this is the sort of things that we should expect. So global internet. Refrain from government-imposed internet shutdowns or degrading domestic internet access either entirely or partially. Refrain from blocking or degrading access to lawful content, services, applications on the net, consistent with principles of net neutrality, subject to applicable law, including international human rights. Now, remember what they said that at the beginning, these are just guidelines, but you can ignore these as you want. Promote our work to realize the benefits of data-free flows based on trust of our shared values as like-minded, democratic, open, and outward-looking partners. Promote cooperation in research, innovation, standard setting. Encourage information sharing regarding security threats through relevant international fora, and reaffirm our commitment to the framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. I know there's a lot in here, but I want to go through it because this is the Ministry of Truth coming into being, and I want you to see it because it's going to exist as much in the private sector as the public sector. Believe me, I'm going to have to rest my throat the rest of the day after this, but it's important we look at all this because maybe we'll see something, and maybe you'll see something I miss, and you see something that I didn't pull up that's important. Bring it up in the comments, please. This is very, very important. So, let's see. Promote affordable, inclusive, and affordable access to the internet. All right. Promote affordable, inclusive, and reliable access to the internet for individuals and businesses where they need it, and support efforts to close digital divides around the world to ensure all people of the world are able to benefit from the global transformation. So this is globalism, right? This is this idea that if what you say is going to offend, let's say it was going to offend a Guatemalan migrant coming up here, and I'm not attacking Guatemala in particular, but you say that, look, America should be for Americans. Oh, that's hate speech. And you can't say that because everyone should be considered equal. Everyone should be equitable. And that if you don't, all the governments are on board with this. Well, they're just people moving, and there's no borders. Well, how can you defend your culture? You can't. And this is what this is. This is a political attack on your culture, the idea that you choose to discriminate and choose to exclude others based on the idea of truth. That they attack in the Ministry of Truth is the idea that truth exists outside what they want, and the idea that you can make any distinction other than by what the government says is what the ultimate attack is about. So they support digital literacy, skills acquisition, and development so that individuals can overcome the digital divide, participate in the internet safely, and realize the economic, social potential of the digital economy. They want you to be propagandized faster, right? That's what it is. Foster greater exposure to diverse cultural and multilingual content, information, and news online. Exposure to diverse content online should contribute to pluralistic public discourse, foster greater social and digital inclusion within society, bolster resistance to disinformation and misinformation, and increase participation in democratic processes. So what did they do? Look what they did when there was an issue with Russia. They shut down access to any ability to get that information. They shut down channels. They put them and they shadow banned them. Like even on Telegram, which is a Russian-owned thing. Man, you have to work hard to find access that's coming out of Russia today. And I do, by the way. And what you see is their people are being propagandized as well. Nations are going to war with one another so the global elite can build this superstructure over us, where they're going to promise these things of everyone can have whatever they want. We'll be one happy family, woke collective. Everyone's involved. Everyone's inclusive. It's so great. We are being homogenized into mincemeat. This is what they want to do. And it's not just a matter of putting people in places. You're not going to be allowed to have other ideas, and you're going to be denied access. Let's say you don't know where to look. You don't know how to look for this shit. Or maybe you haven't been following Alex Jones, all the warnings for 20 years and all these things. You won't be able to find it. They're closing off access. And this is what this is all about. And what they'll do is they'll label it as crime. And if the ideas are too popular, they'll do what they always do. They'll attack the individuals. And they'll slander and destroy them one way or another. Because they have the money and the resources. And what can we do to compete? Except get out. That's what the Pineland do. And this is why I say, even for the people, there's a lot of people say, hey, cryptocurrency is going to help us. If you're playing in the digital economy, you're playing in their world. They can change the rules in a minute, and all that, those ones and zeros you have, doesn't matter if the power button doesn't light up. That's why you have to invest in the real world and in real people and in real belief, like the Lord. Trust in the digital ecosystem is what they ask for, which is why you shouldn't. Work together to promote combat cybercrime, including cyber-enabled crime, and deter malicious cyber activity. So, cyber stalking, hate speech, saying things people don't like. I know people in England who are going to jail just for hosting shows, putting out unpopular ideas. This happens in first world countries. Disinformation and misinformation. Even if a couple years come up after the fact, when do we ever see the government people go to jail? When do we ever see the news media? Oh, well, we were wrong, but we meant well. No, you don't. You're full of crap, and you were lying from the beginning. You talk about it. Go watch Event 201. They're like, well, misinformation narratives could hurt. They want people to be subjects, not citizens. This is an attack. This is neo-feudalism on the friggin' margin. These aren't even good lords, man. It's like we're busy having, what's his name? I have to pick someone terrible, who's running around like having a Commodus or someone, like some idiot. Ensure that government and relevant authorities access to personal data is based in law and conducted in accordance with international human rights law. Protect individual privacy, their personal data, confidentiality from electronic communications and information on end users' electronic devices, consistent with protection of public safety and applicable domestic and international law. Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who supposedly made the internet, who was involved heavily in the beginning of it, he said you should have control of your own information. I actually agree with that. And there are other ways to do this, but instead, don't trust us. Trust the system. Why would we trust you? You're the biggest liars around, and everyone knows it. I mean, literally, you say, well, even with the propaganda, when they were telling Ukraine, they were saying, well, you should believe us because we're the government, and the fact that we say it makes it authoritative. And the reporter dares ask, well, where's your evidence? He's like, I told you, that's your evidence. I mean, these are thugs. It's like, hey, Vinny, I knew a guy. You don't like what I have to say? You know what? You want to talk about Jesus? I'll help you swim with the fishes. This is literally the sort of leadership we have here in our country.
I want more of this.
What? Well, you want me to talk like a tough guy? Look, Guido hanging out on the... I'd probably get my thing shut down. Depending on where you live, Italians are either Guidos or Guineas or Dagos or... Anyway. And look, I don't mind slurs. You can call... How many Polak jokes? How many Poles does it take to change the light bulb? All of them, because we don't have electricity yet.
I don't care if you call me a crowd.
Yeah, but it was funnier. I mean, look at whatever. Like, look at Richard Pryor's old jokes. People were happier when we made fun of each other. At least it was stress relief. And if the internet does that for people,
true.
It was
a nice release valve.
Yeah, you can make fun of everybody. And look, we all do stupid things, but you can't criticize this people. You can't. You might be a redneck if you're the one person who can be criticized.
But you know what the interesting thing about humor is? Humor allows people to interact in ways that they wouldn't, like, if they're constantly offended. If you're able to
And it allows people from disparate backgrounds to find points of common connection.
Yeah.
It does. It absolutely does. And look, if you have ever been around me, I will say I make offensive jokes and I take offensive jokes. And you know what? Why? Because they're funny. Humor is when you talk about things that are true from an ironic way and you laugh at the stupidity of life. But if you can't laugh at anything, but you just have little set comedy, it's not good.
I'm sure every single culture out there has, like, their own, like, signature fart joke. And I'm sure they do too. And I would be there in that circle, sharing and participating in the fart jokes.
You definitely would. Yeah, you'd be bringing the beans. All right, where were we? So we were protecting individuals' privacy, their personal data, the confidentiality of electronic communications and information. on end users' I read that one. I promote the protection of consumers, in particular vulnerable consumers, from online scams and other unfair practices online and from dangerous and unsafe practices sold online. Don't think anyone's problem with that. Promote and use trustworthy network infrastructure and services. Suppliers relying on risk-based assessments that include technical and non-technical factors for network security. They're talking back, but they should EMP-proof it, but that's another story. And refrain from using the internet to undermine the electoral infrastructure, elections, and political process, including through covert information manipulation campaigns. Yeah, I would support that. The federal government's been doing that. The FBI does that. That's their job at this point, you know? And I would, you know what? That's why you got to go back to paper ballots that you can check, that you can count, you can do. Look, I'll make it real easy for you. Candidate A, check in the big box. Candidate B, check in the big box. Pick. And then you can check it. And then you can oh, well, we deleted those. Why'd you delete them, huh? Oh, wait, I know why you deleted them. Of course, those get screwed, too, for other reasons. They make
paper ballots, emotional damage.
I will tell you a truth about government and business. The justice of what you achieve in a given system is inversely proportional to the amount of laws. For instance, if you have ballots that can be disqualified because, the envelope is tampered with, the wrong marker was used or whatever, they put those things in there so they can destroy the ballots. Things aren't complicated. Check A or B. Check yes or no, like George Strait said. But they don't do that. And why don't they do that? Because it's another means of control. The more complexity you put into a law, the more you're trying to take power away from the people and put it in the hands of the lawyers. And we all know the lawyers all work one way, which is to make the system bigger and awful until it dies of its own bureaucratic bloat. And covert information. I mean, you know what? Go look. All right, so here's your homework assignment. Go learn about Tavistock. If you learn about that, you'll understand a lot of this and how it all came about. Because the UK's always been the best at the manipulation stuff. And it's no accident they're the ones who've been heavily involved in manipulating the American process of the last election, which to this day I still believe was stolen. And I don't say it because I voted for Trump. I didn't. I didn't vote for any of them because they're all liars and none of them have shown themselves worthy of the support. But I'm saying it because ultimately people, if you're going to at least pretend to have a democracy, you ought to give the people what they want, because frankly, it's not like Trump did anything that big for us anyway. People say, oh, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, well, things haven't been that good either. Support a rules-based global digital economy which fosters trade and contestable and fair online markets so that firms and entrepreneurs can compete on their merits. Cooperate to maximize the enabling effects of technology for combating climate change. Nobody wants this, but they keep pushing it. And protecting the environment whilst reducing as much as possible the environmental footprint for the internet and different technologies. Or digital technologies. Multi-stakeholder internet governance. So this means globalists control the internet, right? Protect and strengthen the multi-stake system of internet governance, including the development, deployment, and management of its main technical protocols and other related standards and protocols. Refrain from undermining the technical infrastructure essential to the general availability and integrity of the internet. I'm not used to reading so long aloud. You have to bear with me. So we're at the very end here. So the final statement is, we believe in the principles of the future of the internet are universal in nature, and such we invite those who share this vision to affirm these principles and join us in the implementation of this vision. This declaration takes into account and expects to contribute with the existing processes in the UN system, the G7, the G20, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the World Trade Organization, by the way, the World Health Organization as well, who's putting in that treaty about how pandemic law overrules national law, and other relevant multilateral, multi-stakeholder fora, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, the Internet Governance Forum, and the Freedom Online Coalition. That's their name. We also welcome partnership with the many civil society organizations essential to promoting an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure internet and defending fundamental freedoms and human rights online. Partners in this declaration intend to consult and work closely with stakeholders in carrying forward this vision. This came out the same week that they put out the Ministry to Control Disinformation, the Ministry of Truth. So what are you seeing here? This is what they're going to use against you, against me, against all of us in the internet. And how are they going to do it? They're going to make new laws. And are they going to ask us what do we want? No. It's actually really convenient. Now the Democrats are incredibly unpopular, and they're not going to win the next election. So they're going to pass a bunch of laws. They're going to lose the election. It'll be blamed on them. The Republicans will go in there promising to fix things. And you know what they'll do? The same thing they always do. Nothing. And you know what we'll be stuck with? These laws will be on the books and no one will ever get rid of them. Department of Homeland Security goes away. None of these things go away. And what they do is they use the power of an outgoing majority that's unpopular to pass everything that nobody wants. And the deal that the people agree to on the other side is they're not going to question it. They'll be like, that's settled law. Like Trump said, lock her up. Remember? That's settled. Let's not worry. That's settled. Okay, this is settled. But you know what? It's unsettling what they actually do. So I want to go back. There is a press release with this, and I want to read who's involved with this so that you can hear. This is from April 28th. This came out literally 1 or 2 days after the Ministry of Truth, all right, the disinformation ministry. Fact sheet. United States and 60 global partners launched Declaration for the Future of the Internet. Quote, the internet has been revolutionary, provides unprecedented opportunity for people around the world to connect and express themselves, and continues to transform the global economy, enabling economic opportunity for billions of people. Yet has also created serious policy challenges. Globally, we are witnessing a trend of rising digital authoritarianism, which, by the way, is true, and it's happening on all sides, and they like it, where some states act to repress freedom of expression, censor independent news sites, like we're seeing with the entire thing that's coming out of Russia and China, and they do the same thing. It's all of them use the same excuse, and this is why the wars set us backdrop against each other. And that's why they like this new hot Cold War 2.0 that probably will go hot because they want to get rid of a bunch of people. But anyway, so they use it to censor independent news sites, interfere with elections, promote disinformation, and deny their citizens other human rights. At the same time, millions of people still face barriers to trust, and cybersecurity risks and threats undermine the trust and reliability of networks. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Voice of America is the CIA front group. It's the easy one. The ones that do the real nasty work is USAID and the Soros people that we fund through all these NGOs. We do this all the time, so we're complaining about the very thing we do. What hypocrisy. At 2, Biden. Democratic governments and other partners are rising to the challenge. Other partners, right? I mean, I love the term other partners. Yeah, as long as you're with us, we don't care. Today, the United States, with 60 partners from around the globe, launched the Declaration for the Future of the Internet. And that's what you heard. So those endorsing the Declaration include, and we'll read these, and I'm going to pull out these countries. I'm going to talk a little bit about any country that's in here that is not either in the European Union, not in NATO, or not in the United States or Canada. That's fine. So we have Albania, Andorra, Argentina. Argentina is interesting because they've been playing footsie with the Chinese. Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Cabo Verde. That's in Africa. Canada, Colombia. Colombia is the one state that America has good reach into. Costa Rica, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Estonia, the European Commission, Finland, France, Germany, Georgia, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, which is our one outpost out there, the only country that seems to be along with us there in the eastern, in Asia that isn't part of the Anglosphere anyway. Kenya, Kosovo, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, the Maldives, Malta, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Moldova, Montenegro, Netherlands, New Zealand, Niger, North Macedonia. So a couple countries we send a bunch of aid to are on this list, but if you look at how they actually practice things, they don't care. North Macedonia, Palau, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Senegal, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden. Interesting, South Korea is not on this list. Taiwan, Trinidad and Tobago, the UK, Ukraine, and Uruguay. So basically, this is the outpost of the West with a lot of money. Is Chile on the list? Chile isn't even on the list. That's interesting. So they've got like 4 countries in South America, a couple small ones in Central America, a couple token Africans. No offense, that's what it is. And basically no one in Asia. This is basically your coalition of the willing that's fighting against the Russians. That's what it is. Notice the countries that aren't in there. India isn't in there. Brazil isn't in there. China isn't in there. The majority of humanity, expressed by people, aren't in there, okay? And why? Because this is our arsenal of democracy, the war to fight the world, as they say in World War I. So this declaration represents a political commitment among declaration partners to advance a positive vision for the internet and digital technologies. It reclaims the promise of the internet in the face of the global opportunities and challenges presented by the 21st century. So this is going to be your woke net. This is what it is. It also reaffirms and recommits its partners to a single global internet, even though it already excludes 2/3 of the countries. Funny how that works. One that is truly open and fosters competition, privacy, and respect for human rights. Declaration principles include commitments to protect human rights and fundamental freedoms for all people, promote a global internet that advances the free flow of information, advance inclusive and affordable connectivity so that all people can benefit from the digital economy. And that's a form of digital colonialism if you really want to get into it. They want the internet in some of these poor countries so they can propagandize them. Because countries that aren't poor, like Europe, are on board with this. This is why soft power strategies work. And this is why America is really hard to beat. That we are the heart of the colossus in a lot of ways of the global soft power strategy of saying you can't resist us, you become like us. And it's sort of true if you look at it. That's why a lot of Chinese people just, they don't have any fight in them, because what are you going to do? It's just like it's so easy that it degrades us, and that the few people can then control a lot. That's why they like these systems of information control. All the time we spend seeing our desires met on the internet or controlling those are things that we're not using to impact and change the world around us, because we've given up on it. And I'm guilty of this as much as anyone. That's what Pineland's about. That's why when we go, we're gonna have to go back to land and be disconnected. Something that's really important that we're gonna have to think about very deeply, and that you should think about in your own life. How much information you're consuming, in what context. And it's a lot of times the stuff you consume that's most damning is not news like this. Propaganda like this is easy to point out, but it's a demonstration of the things you don't think of as propaganda. Think that the same people who promote that are promoting these. So how are they changing your behaviors in ways that make you more dependent? Because that's what sustainability in their worlds is all about. That we all come together with one solution so that we can protect the whole planet, which is literally how do we protect you from yourself so that other people can control you. Anyway, where were we? Protect and strengthen the multi-stakeholder approach to governance that keeps the internet running for the benefit of all. In signing this declaration, the U.S. and partners will work together to promote this vision and principles globally, while respecting each other's regulatory autonomy within our own jurisdictions in accordance with our respective domestic laws and international legal obligations. So what they're going to do is they're going to control elections as well. They control propaganda, they control information, and they put a hack who's a disinformation fellow. I want to be a disinformation fellow. Hey, I can lie as good as anyone. Let me see, what's my background? Dissident, politician, went to a high-quality school. I mean, I'm sure that pays pretty well. I'm even willing to work remotely. I'll go out there and lie and tell you I'm lying. I'll do next phase. I'll be the liar who admits he's lying so that I'm actually truth. Mind's blown. It would be refreshing if someone just went up there in government once in their life and said, here's the lie I'm supposed to tell you. I would love that moment. That'd be great. Never happened, though, but it should happen. Over the last year, the U.S. has worked with partners from all over the world, including civil society, industry, academia, and other stakeholders. And stakeholders, what's that mean? People who've bought you. What stakeholder literally means, we own a share of this. It means someone who owns you, like a corporation. To reaffirm the vision of an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure internet, and reverse negative trends in this regard. What's the negative trend? The negative trend is free speech. I don't see them breaking up Amazon. I don't see them looking for demonopolization. Under this vision, people everywhere will benefit from an internet that is unified, unfragmented, facilitated global communications and commerce, and supports freedom, innovation, education, and trust. So that's your government, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States of America. And since most of our audience is either in the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or in Western Europe, that's you too. I don't know anyone who's not in there. It looks like the Swiss held out for now. They'll be in 12 minutes from now. This is the world we're coming into. Let me set this computer down here for a minute. Weaver, why don't you come with me? Come on the camera. Here we go. Me and Weaver are going to talk about what comes next. So this is Weaver. He's our silky chicken. I want to bring a little bit of lightness into this here. All right, there we go. Put that between my legs. Weaver, say hi. Silkies are dumb chickens. What happens is they're dumb for two reasons. They're dumb, number one, because their feathers go over their eyes. Put your feet down, buddy. You'll be fine. He's sitting on his head. Well, he likes to sit on his head. So what happens is their eyes get caught behind the feathers. That's one problem that they have. But the other problem is with Weaver in particular. Weaver's just not that bright. But anyway, we like Weaver. Weaver's like Hey Hey in the Moana movie in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, Weaver's like the way people are too, which is that they're blinded because they don't look at anything besides what's right in front of them. And if I put food literally, if he's here and I put it here, he won't be able to find it. If I put it here, I have to literally open his eyes and put it in front of him. So what I tell you is don't be blind. If you're a chicken like Weaver, you have a reasonable excuse, and we'll probably trim his little eye hair feathers to make it easier. We do periodically. We just haven't been feeling very well, and that helps him to some extent. And part of it is just nature. Now, Weaver, like I said, has the excuse of being a chicken nugget in the making. Not that we would ever eat Weaver. Weaver's our buddy. But we love Weaver. But what I'm saying to you is that we here in the United States are being turned increasingly into a herd that's being managed. And in order to not have that happen, you have to have free speech. And what I'm warning you is what they're doing in government is happening at the exact same time that we're being set up with a false messiah type figure in Elon Musk, who's promising to have a free internet. And even the elite publications I was reading, I think it was in Foreign Policy, was talking about there were going to be three superpowers in the future. It said the United States representing democratic values, China representing industrial values, and the internet representing popular values, and that they're setting up the internet as a third entity with people who control and manage it such that they can have certain outcomes. And this is part of the global plan. So the internet was a technology that was made by the defense industry where we saw it as a chance to have freedom and knowledge of a lot of things. And that's true, although we always get that at the price of someone watching us. When you go to Google, when you go into that little confession box or a search box, always assume someone is seeing what you're saying, what you're looking at, what you're going forward. And that's just the easy part. They're at the point where they can literally read your brains at this point, not even making that up. But what you should also assume as we go forward is that they're trying to control through these digital screens, through the image of the beast, if you want to put it that way, the what we think, how we process, to a point where people don't even disagree anymore because we all see the same things. And if we disagree, our response is to go back as dissidents and just go hide out in our little corners of the internet where we sit there being isolated and ostracized, where eventually, if they go forward and they have some modicum of UBI, they'll provide enough support to the survivors on the other side of this so there's no more resistance, educate up the next generation, leave off the dead ends, and you have a single humanity where you have integrated technology controlling everything we do. This is the end game of the war we're fighting. That is your beast system that's coming into being. And there's different pieces of it. We talk about the mark. We talk about the idea, of human tracking, of these different applications they want to have, whether they're integrated internally or they're on different apps. We talk about, Neuralink. Elon Musk is at the heart of that, of the ability to provide uploads into a direct alternative to the GPS system.
Did you say he wants to provide free internet?
Yeah, that's what Starlink's all about. And why wouldn't he if you control the data?
Because, in the Kingsman movie,
yeah, Valentine. He's a lot like Valentine.
Trying to provide free phone service for
sure.
everybody, and
if you get some,
had it, got linked into that signal that made everybody
if
crazy.
The item you get is for free, odds are you are the product. That's been true with social media for a long time, and that's what the fight is over. And the fight is over AI and whether there's going to be a single control system that's easier to go, or whether AI is just going to try control all of us and manage us like a herd. Weaver's getting upset. I know, buddy. I'm upset about it too. So what we end up finding out over time is that the systems that are out there are the ones that control us, and that's what I said in Come Out of Babylon. And that you need to learn to see these systems for what they are and stop looking for false messiahs. Anything that tells you to invest more deeply into the very things that is getting us into trouble is in fact against your interest. And I know that's a very hard thing, because how do you resist that? And can you resist that just by being outside of it? The battle that they were fighting in 5th generation warfare is for you as individuals. And once they have enough individuals, what they will do is they'll move the dissidents out of the way. They'll have the woke people support it, and there won't be any other alternative, and they'll rewrite history. Think of the 1619 Project as just one example. So this is the future we are dealing with, and this is why it's incumbent upon each of us who understands this now to begin preparing, separating ourselves from society, and begin organizing with one another to offer what resistance we can, so that at least we may enjoy what we have of our lives as separate. And if we can do that, then maybe we can have a more complex conversation about what can be done against this. But don't count on the fact that a war is going to come to destroy all these things. It's going to break the global institutions. It will break the governments. It will break nations. It will break the idea of wars being between groups of people altogether, and the idea that we need a single global solution. This was prophesied long ago. It's no secret. The game's just playing out in our lifetime. All right, buddy.
That's what I just got.
What did you get?
I got a couple of those Mylar sleeping bags and the Mylar blankets for EMS.
Do you want to explain why that's a brilliant prep for the audience?
It's basically like a tinfoil hat for your whole body.
So a Mylar bag, if you get a Mylar sleeping bag, you can get them through different fire hazard things, or a Mylar blanket. It retains 90% of your body heat if you're in a cold weather environment. It has a reflective surface. It also interrupts certain electronic signals. So any of these things are benefits.
It's a little wearable Faraday.
And you can find them for what, like $8, $5, $6?
It's like $2 for a blanket.
$2 for a blanket. Fire Depot site. So there is a practical prep that we've taken a look at. Up for here, we look at it for the cold. We look at it for electronic interference. And look, people say, oh, you're crazy. You're worried about all these things. The people who've been called crazy for the last 20 years have had a pretty damn good track record. Trust the crazy, because what's crazy is that we are giving power over to a group of people who do not represent us, do not interest, and they revile us. I mean, you go back to some of the people who are leaders of this, they say, humans are parasites, and that's how they view us. So offer resistance to that. fight the ministry of truth, speak truth when you can. If you can do nothing else, you can share this program. If you're too scared to do it yourself, you can support us. We do it. The Venmo CVC PRV, PO Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. But I will say this, especially because I know a lot of you lean right of center who are here in the United States. When you talk to your Republican congressmen or your Republican candidates in an election year, be like, are you going to remove the ministry of truth? Are you going to audit the Federal Reserve? Are you going to see that money goes first to the American people and not to other things? Are you going to demand wars only held domestically? Old Ron Paul showed the way how to do it. And if they don't have answers to it, be like, well, we can't really go there. You know what? Then don't vote for them. And you know what? I will tell you, as weird as it is, you're better off having the pain be fast. You're better off having hardcore leftists run this country into the ground before the full technological apparatus is ready than you are voting people who aren't going to do a difference. And here's the truth of it. You can't win an election or get the media coverage you need if you're willing to make a difference. I learned that the hard way. If you understand that, you begin voting with your feet, as so many Americans have. But I will tell you this, don't trust the politicians to save you. Some people say some very good things, like Mark DeSantis does. But nonetheless, the culture, the demography, where you're going to be, you're not voting for a state government who's going to protect you. You're voting for a community you're going to live in and the people you're going to have around you. And that means you got to know yourself. And at the end of this battle, what we're really fighting for is the right to remain the humans we are and to be discriminatory beings, because to discriminate is to make decisions about what you think is right and wrong. Let everyone have a voice, by all means. Let everyone come to the table. And if they're an idiot, be allowed to call them that, but don't shut them down before they're able to speak. That was the way they actually built this up, and it's something we ought to get back to if we're going to try to go forward with this system. And when it breaks, I'll tell you, we will miss it, because that will not be the case. We will all live under the authoritarianism that's forced on us by trying to survive after the horrors that these people put us through. And the fact that we probably won't have enough food. A lot of people will be sick from medicines that didn't help at all. And that we're going to have a lot of people who are spiritually empty. So I just close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, I pray that when we see what the world doesn't have to offer, that we remember what you have to offer in the salvation offered to us by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who told us both of the world to come, but how we could enjoy each other in this world. And let's look upon the lesson he teaches and that you offered through him to us today, so that we might live more happily with one another. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray that for every one of you. Thank you for spending time with me today. I know it was a longer show. I had a lot to get out, but I wanted to share that with you. Please go check out whatever you need to. You can go find that on the whitehouse.gov site. All of the information I put there at the end. I cited the other sources along the way if you need to see it, and there's a lot more. Go read them for yourself. I mean, this is crazy, and the person they put in there, but you're not even hearing a peep about it. And I will tell you, as the war with Russia gets worse, that will be used as the means to silence people, because dissidents will be broadly defined as terrorists. The government's already been warming people up to that idea, which is why you need to be getting to the point where pretty soon you're going to be outside the system. Not going to be too long before old Tom isn't here to tell you what you need to do. A lot of people are really coming to that understanding, and if you're lonely and you don't have a community, join the Telegram group t.me/Atlantic Homeland, or reach me if you don't want to talk to a bunch of people. You can find me over there at Tom Kaczynski. Just go in the group and find me. I'm not hard to find, Lord knows. All right, God bless each and every one of you. May the Lord's blessing be upon you today. You got anything, Derp?
No, I'm just good with the color commentary.
Okay, so for Dana, myself, and the chicken, God bless. All of you have a great day. Thank you for spending some time with us. Enjoy your weekend. We're going to have a sermon this Sunday. I was going to do one originally just as a little preview where we were going to go into some of the harder aspects of the Christian walk, but we're all so beat up. I'm going to try to find some upbeat inspiration for you all. Even people who are hardcore can sometimes take some relaxation in the word, and we're going to try to find some good stuff for you. So I'm going to think about how I want to do that and tell you some stories about how things went right. Because in the end, the victory has been won. Christ is coming back, and all we have to do is not become our worst versions of ourselves. Trusting in this world and in this technology will do that. We have to learn to disconnect. It's a hard path. The irony of saying that as I do this is not lost on me, but hey, at least we're talking about the way out, and we are at least asking good questions, which is a start, and we've got a long way to go. So let's keep working on it, Pinelanders. Pinelander out. God bless. I know she should.